and it's okay with protocol to take this on. And will it show here, or I just work off of that? Welcome, my name is Kent Torvey, I'm with Wank Associates, and we're a water resource and environmental and civil firm out of the Twin Cities area. And we were hired a few years ago under a contract to create a master drainage plan. And a master drainage plan really sets the framework for a governing body on what they want to do with drainage or water, just like the county I see has a transportation plan. So you can do the same with drainage. I did ask the crowd here if they had been to a meeting before, and it's about 2/3 that have heard it or been to a meeting, and about 1/3 that this is their first meeting. I'm saying that so if it seems like I'm going through things that we've already covered, it's because we do have some in the audience that this is the first time. So this will be an open house format, and after I'm done here, I will sit up in a commissioner's chair and we can answer questions, take input. And again, it's meant to be informal. And if you have a question, please ask it. Everybody else, somebody else in the room probably has that same question. So we talk about a why. What, why, how we do a plan. So you all know things are changing in the county. The economy's good. There's more development happening. There's more tile happening. There's just more everything happening that affects water. You can know that the state does authorize the county to do this. This is not the county getting over the yellow line in the road and doing something they're not authorized to do. And with that authorization, a first step is to have a plan. So what did we do? We engaged the public, and this happened in 2019. We came up with priority issues. And we held open houses, and some of you might have been there up at the Harrisburg Community Center. Again, very open discussion, and we had maps out and people described what's going on in the county, because it's not up to the consultant to give you a plan. It's up for the citizens to tell the consultant what are the issues, and we put together a plan. And that's what we did. There was also a technical committee. So there are people in their day-to-day business that deal with drainage. City staff, consultants, private sector, agency staff like DOT or Game Fish. So we've had good luck forming a technical committee. And if there's technical issues, we can run them by other people that work in the county and get feedback. So that was established, and we met a few times, and we did one meeting in 2020 over Zoom, and it wasn't much. We didn't have much new to present, and as you know, the Zoom meetings are a little bit tough to get interaction. So 2019, we focused on what's the issues, what are we hearing, what can we do about it? And then we get into 2020, and it was to wrap up the plan. We collected a bunch of the data and presented it in Chapter 5 of the plan. And the other item we did in 2020 was then work on implementation. Kind of the so what. What are we going to do after we have a plan, or how do we do step 1 of drainage management? So here we sit in 2021, we just started in 2020. The world changed. So it's been going slow due to COVID. There's a list, 2019, you can see we were out. 2020, commission updates, we met with the TAC, again, Technical Advisory Committee, called the TAC. And I would come out for a drainage board meeting or two and basically give a similar presentation to this. a note, and maybe y'all know this, but I'll just repeat it. Your county commission also serves as the drainage board and meets a few times, and I forget what the requirement is, that they probably close their board meeting and open as the drainage board, but nobody changes seats. It's just a statutory item. So through the process, we came up with this symbol. It's nothing new, the three-legged stool approach, but proper drainage management needs them all. You need some process and planning like we're doing. Do some projects, because a large-scale project can fix a problem. And then permitting on the new changes to the landscape out there. So if any of those legs are missing, you're not very balanced. And yes, it's a challenge. Yes, it takes money. Yes, it takes staff. Yes, yes, and yes, it takes work.
Permitting, sir?
Yes.
What are you guys looking at permitting? Drain, farmer drain, putting out drain towers, would that be one of them?
Maybe. We're not there yet. Oops, maybe. We're not there yet. I gotta speak into this. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but not too much in depth during the presentation, but we can talk about it during open discussion. So as we summarized all the words and all the input, and we would put them into, rather than have 38 priority issues, we kind of categorized them into 6. And y'all know with drainage and flooding that these are typical words. You don't see maintenance up there, the culvert's clogged, okay, but it comes from erosion. So we heard about maintenance, we heard about culverts that need to be cleaned and replaced, but we would put it up and it can go under erosion, it can go under infrastructure. So we're not really missing any words that we heard from the people. I'll get into rain event characteristics here, and because I like the data and I like water. So then the big bullet at the bottom, who pays and how much and how do we do that? Good question. So if you like data, chapter 5 is solid. And the best thing we can do is to go out and get everybody else's data and put it in one place for a county resident. It is surprising, people do kitchen table, like going through it. They will interact with data. Some people will totally ignore it. But your policies and your engineering and your judgment need to be based in data, engineering practices, so this commission isn't swinging one way or the other every different issue. So it just helps to be based in data. I'll go back there. Water covers a lot of things. You'll see soils up there. We even touched on aquifers, the different districts. So drainage and water covers basically the whole environment. So it's raining harder. Storms are different. Who knows why? So, and that's exactly what we saw where I'm from. The rainstorms changed. So there's a 1960s document, had a rainfall, and Atlas 14 was out of NOAA. And guess what? Didn't change here. And they would analyze in a rainfall event, if you're designing a system, you use the 24-hour event. Most of that rainfall happens in the middle hour, but it's the standard engineering method. And you haven't changed that much. Okay, that was interesting. But as you hear from people that it's raining different, maybe, but your 24-hour total didn't change. So then we look at longer term averages. And in yellow, you'll see a slight uptick in the 20-year. another 3 inches. Well, that's like one more storm, but that's weird because that's not what's the whole story here, what's going on here. So as we heard about rain, as we looked at the data, we're not seeing it in the 24-hour event, and we didn't see it in the 20-year average. So you keep digging. So I broke it down into 10-year averages, and there you go. And I've said this before, the commission, and if I'm saying things again, people have heard, I'm sorry, but we're gonna regroup and just go through everything. You know, it seems like memory's a 20-year thing. 9/11 was 20 years ago. Seems longer than that, but I'm just going by my memory. 10 years seems closer, so what we're hearing from people is more short-term, let's say within 10 years. And bingo, there it is. You're on an uptick, you probably got a 25-ish inches per year average, and all of a sudden you're at 30. So 5 inches more, especially if you get it in the spring, especially if you get it in a 5-inch storm. You're flat here, so your topography says that's gonna hang around. With technology, there's some advanced data. And I believe this is land classification database. So our GIS people did an analysis of land cover, you know, between 2001 and 2016, and those aren't magic dates, but they were when the data was available. And they can look at it and do a GIS or an IT analysis and see what land has changed. So 5,000 acres across the county in 15 years. Now the term develop doesn't mean it's all blacktop. It just means a farm field went to houses, okay? It could mean it went to a shopping mall. But developed, there are categories for highly developed, medium developed, low developed. So when we put percent of blacktop or impervious in there, we came up with 2,300 acres of new impervious in the county, and that was just at 2016. And we've had 3 or 4 years since then of good, solid economic growth. And it's not just up north, you know, every city's developed a little bit, but yes, it'd be mostly up north. So we get to the who. I touched on it a little bit. County has authority. And yes, we are identified in the state statutes that we can do this. So here's another term that came up with, and I got it from the movie Fugitive. Harrison Ford was running from the marshal. And if you remember the scene, he says, I didn't shoot my wife, or I didn't kill my wife in the tunnel. And the marshal says, I don't care. So I kind of took that, and water doesn't care. It doesn't care. It's just going downhill. So that's where you get into jurisdictions and governance, and it gets complicated. Plus, does every raindrop matter? Some places it does, but out in the middle of 160 acres, does it? I don't know. It's not easy that every raindrop matters. So you have different customers in your county, different citizens, different runoff, different land use, different topography, and we're trying to get a handle on this so we can manage it differently. Came up with this diagram based on water does not care. And looking at your map, I like to simplify them into diagrams. Plus, you have cities with subdivision authority outside their municipal boundaries. And I've asked Toby and John, explain this to me again about every trip out I make, but we ended up with this diagram that a city has its limits in white, but it has subdivision, I'll call it authority, and it might be the wrong word, beyond that. And water doesn't care. You got some water coming in from the west, over by Lennox, you got some going out the east, that's all county stuff. But yet, I think a 9 mile, starting up in Sioux Falls, going into the county, into the subdivision authority, back into the city, and back out the other way and back into the county. So that, in my mind, that long one is kind of like 9 mile. It's just gonna go wherever it wants to, as far as jurisdictions. What's our county doing now? We have FEMA, Floodplain Authority, and the joint review. Toby could give you more on that if you're into the details of when does the county have authority and what is that authority, and it gets messy. And then you have the larger agencies. So the new plan, we're gonna continue what we're doing. We're gonna do project reviews. We have already started that at the county. A condition of approval is a drainage management plan, and then they send it my way and I review it. And they revise the plans. And if you're into this a little bit, you'll hear the words H&H, hydrology and hydraulics or something, but an H&H study. And then we put in a process in the CIP part of it for projects. If you followed this when we started and you're wondering what's new, Chapter 6 in Appendix G is the capital improvement plan. Education's in there. It's probably one of the most important. Again, the why, what, who, how. We'll do project reviews. Not sure whether we'll permit yet or what we'll permit yet. And you can get a lot of bang for the buck out of capital projects. If you can detain in a low area that's marginal anyway, you can really make some headway in detention. So we created a flow chart. Who could do it? A citizen can come forward and request the county look at it. A township can, because there's gonna be different people that care. Different lands that are affected. It might be a few agriculture producers. It might be a city and the county doing a joint project. We've done projects for the nonprofits, Ducks Unlimited, things like that. So water can bring different people together, and we wanna make sure we allow that potential. As we looked at the county, we broke it into 2 tiers. So the gray up north, more development pressure, it's flat. More existing problems. As we get into the white, it's not as developed, might be more tile issues, neighbor to neighbor out there. Maybe in the gray, every drop matters. Maybe in the white, every drop doesn't matter. Maybe. But your county lays out pretty well for the gray and the white zones here, based on topography, development pressure, existing problems, and where you're headed if you don't do anything. So one of the ways for moving forward is we could have a permit. So you do a plan. The plan allows you to adopt an ordinance, and in the ordinance says thou shalt get a permit. Grading, drainage, stormwater, whatever we want to call it. Could do that. We're not doing that tonight. The plan doesn't do that. The commission could say, yes, let's move forward with an ordinance, or let's talk about it some more. So I talk about shall, and that's a permit. You shall do this. You shall have detention. We could, down in the white zone in tier 2, recommend. It's a challenge to take one rule and apply it over the whole county to every situation. Doesn't work very well. You can, but it's unfair. So the 2 tiers, and we're trying to be flexible here. So we got into maintenance, and I mentioned it. So erosion control, we'll be reviewing plans for them. Again, in the yellow, we beefed up the CIP and created that in the final version of the plan. And going back to the diagram, what we can do as a county is we can manage it consistently across lines in the sand. One township to another, one city to the township, neighbor to neighbor. We can create some consistency with how we're doing this. Here's a schematic I created. So what's this mean, detention? Detention is storing the extra runoff, and let's call it metering it out a pipe. So after is the same as before on the rate. So if you got a bathtub, the hole in the bottom doesn't change. Yes, you get more water, the bathtub gets fuller because you created impervious. But it goes out the bottom of the bathtub drain at the same rate. So that means the culvert downstream hasn't changed because it's receiving the same rate. Yes, it's receiving more, but it's at the same rate. So the hatched area is, as we started to review a few plans here, we're putting in, you need to have effective detention. If you've noticed, you'll see some ponds out there and they're dug so low that in the spring they're already full. Well, that's not effective to the downstream culvert when it needs it. In a wet spring and now you get a rainfall, that detention isn't effective, it's already wet. So you'll notice the house goes up. It does affect the site. And that hatched area can be calculated using standard engineering tools. The model, the software, it's all standard. We put a little sediment storage below the hatched area, dig it a foot or 2 deeper, that's good. You just keep your sediment on site. That'll help the maintenance downstream in the long term. So the plan, I'm proud of it because I was part of it, but it was really built from listening, taking what we heard, looking at your topography, looking at your economic growth, looking at the data of rainfall, and trying to figure out how do we take our first steps for day 1. And the best time to do this would have been back in '01. When's the best time to do everything? 5-10 years ago. So I give the commission credit. They're starting on day 1 now and moving forward. I always put the last bullet in because we're not just going to print money and fix. It's not the county's job to fix everything out there. But we can provide a way for people to get together. We can provide a way, if a project wanted to get done, what would be a fair way to assess costs. We can, as staff, look for grants. And we can have a process to do something. And I just want to be honest, it's not going to get all fixed in 5 years. They're on their 40 and 50-year plans. Norm Wank, of Wank, who founded Wank, they've done 40 years of planning, and they pick things off. So they're 40 years better than they were day one. And that's where we want to be 40 years from now. So there's the contacts, any email. Toby just send it into the general planning, and then they'll play traffic cop on who answers it. So at this point, I think I move up there and we just go more to an open forum. Right? All right, who's first? Did I answer your question on a permit? Okay, or
It's undecided, it sounds like.
it is. So the first step's the plan, then it's an ordinance, and then what's the ordinance cover? What's your thoughts? Tile, no tile?
If they're gonna tile, they need a permit. They had a lot of tiling done around.
If you have any questions or comments, if you could please step to the podium.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna make you move.
That's all right.
So in my area, I live west of T, and the farmers over there have laid miles and miles of drain tile. And I think that has played a part into my area having more flooding issues. So between that and the city of T growing and the township and the city of T adding a third of a mile of concrete culvert to dump water into the federal wetland area there, that all runs my way. So I'm glad to see that somebody's going to try and get a plan. Concerned that the cities may not be as proactive. So I guess my question is, have you reached out to the cities, the small towns that are in the county to get their input on this?
Yes. They received invites to this.
Yeah.
And you remember the technical committee?
Yeah.
That ended up being the cities up north. I believe we had a representative from, was it Lennox?
All municipalities.
What's that?
All municipalities.
They all showed up,
They're all invited.
but did they show up?
Majority did, yes.
Yeah. And I know we had one public works guy I talked with, you know.
So, yeah, as far as drain tile, that's an issue for me because I've watched miles and miles of that going in the farmlands around me, and we just have more water getting dumped in the ditch, and it ends up washing out our roads. So,
And I have made the statement, and so I'll just repeat it again, you know, because we would get into discussions. Well, a drain tile drains it down, so when you get the 7 inches in July, the soil absorbs it. So we have that opinion. There's also the spring, when we don't want the wet spring, when we don't want the water, it's running full.
mhm.
So we can't, here's my statement I made, we can't say tile's the problem,
Not completely, no.
but we can't say it's not the problem.
Yeah.
And
I'm just hoping that they look at adding something to address tiling. I'm not against it, but there needs to be some kind of boundary with it, that's all.
okay, thank you.
Yesterday, the governor and our representatives were on the news. They're putting in Highway 100. My question is, this is Lincoln County. I'm on the very north end of Lincoln County. Highway 100, as I understand it, is going through the low area, 1.5 miles north of me. I want to know whether there's any plans on where they're diverting that water. Are you guys working with the state? Or is this just Lincoln County? That's my question. Are you guys together? Or are we doing this as a single entity? Because this is critical as far as my concerns are. If they do what I think they're going to do, I'm going to get pounded and I'm already being drowned out. So I need an answer.
Yeah. Right now, I haven't reviewed those plans. For the rest of the group. Right now, I haven't reviewed those plans. As we get into reviews, we can give advisory comments to the is it a DOT project, Toby? Okay, so I don't want to pick on the DOT if it's not even their project. But as we get in the game, let's say, right, all of a sudden the county's in the drainage game. And as you're in the meetings, or you get invited to the meetings, then you can start to provide input. We would not have a permit for the DOT. We would be able to review them and comment. And if somebody's being impacted, we would want to point that out. So as you go up the food chain in agencies, sometimes they only have to meet federal requirements, right? So then you're invited, or, yeah, you can take a look at the plans. But it's hard to have authority as a county over a higher agency. So yes, you could be in the game, you should be in the game to look for things like this. Would you be able to stop it? A county stopping a DOT? I don't know. That's a higher battle. You know, things would get crossways if you're gonna try to stop the DOT from doing a project. You should be able to look at it and say, instead of a 48, it used to be a 36. Can't we do a 36? Then you don't pound the person downstream. So that's my experience. I've looked at a lot of DOT plans, you know, and sat in a lot of meetings. So our role as we sit there is to look for the local landowners. We're probably the only one in that meeting looking at, well, are we flooding upstream, are we flooding downstream? Or are we just maintaining status quo? Okay, next.
This is my first meeting, so I'm just learning, and thank you for presenting. But question I had is, as far as the plan or the approach, are you thinking more of a regulatory approach or actually digging a real ditch, or kind of a combination of both? Is, I guess, just clarification on that.
So we would be, okay. Let me know if I answer it. So in plan review, cold storage comes in and they are gonna change 5 acres of farm to 3 acres of impervious. We would review the detention plan and make sure it's adequate. If it wasn't adequate, we would list out what they need to do to make it adequate and then approve the plan. So our plan review would be based on land use change. And then we'd be looking at that hatched area of that effective detention. And just under standard engineering approach, make sure that it's built properly. I don't know, did that answer your question? You mentioned digging a ditch, so I'm not sure I got it with my detention example.
Sure. No, I just didn't know if, when I heard a master drainage plan, I think back to my great-grandfather in Minnesota, and they were digging dredge ditches way back in the early, I think it was like 1914, 1915, because they had, major water issues there. So they put in a lot of dredge ditches throughout Minnesota, and I didn't know if that was part of the plan or if you're just looking at preventing things from getting out of hand by having some regulations, having detention ponds on individual projects, or if you were just looking at a whole countywide project to dig or lay drainage tile or whatever to get rid of some of the surface water versus preventing it from flowing.
So was it your grandpa's ditch, you said?
Great-grandfather.
Great-grandpa, was it in the county?
It wasn't in Lincoln County, it was
Okay.
back in southwest Minnesota, but,
Okay. So in the plan, if you want to look up, there's a map of all the tile, they're called watershed districts. So the farmers would join and put in the tile. So we put all of that information in there. If some year they wanted to revive that, I'm guessing most of them are defunct now, or they just do fixes on their own. But if a group wanted to improve that or revive it, it's in the plan that they could come in. So to get to your point, we do have, some sub-regional tile districts.
sure.
But this is not a plan to take every ditch and what do we need to do to convey the water out.
Sure. Thank you.
So just to touch more base on that, when you're conforming a new development and you're making them adhere to what you want for extra drainage runoff, who's who's making sure that's certified, it's built right, and that's gonna be there versus just what's on a plan?
Yeah, so the process is that the plans are approved and they'll have a date. And I'll write a review memo. As a requirement of approval, they need to turn in as-built. So they go out and survey the one we worked on today. They needed to do some compensatory flood storage because they were filling a little bit. Well, at the end of the project, they go survey that and survey their hole and turn it in, and we review the as-built. So we're just starting to put in a verification process that they need to turn in. They did what they said they were gonna do or got it close. So I think I'm getting to your point of, well, anybody can turn in a plan and get it approved and then they go do what they want. And
But it's virtually what you're saying though, is a licensed surveyor is the one that has to certify it,
or engineer.
or engineer. They
And
have
the
to be
requirement,
licensed in the state of South
Yep.
Dakota.
and the requirement is the engineer of record then turns in the as-built and the certification. So the same engineer carries through that they turn in what they said they were gonna do. And, the engineer might not be on the job. His job was to get the permit. 9 months later, it's built. Well,
Now he has to certify that
the
out. to make sure
developer
it's
needs
right.
to pay him to go out and certify the contractor did what was on the plans. So there's a little gap in there, the engineers aren't out there all the time and looking at every
So then,
teaspoon.
another point would be is there a time point into this stating, and that'll probably come more to Toby, of how long they have to certify this out? Who's gonna keep track of that? If that makes sense. We've already had some of these that have been done in the county that were not built to
Correct.
specs at all.
And stuff happens during construction. You hit bad dirt, you got good dirt, stuff's
Or
moving.
you got some bad contractors that don't follow plans.
Or you have some owners that, I
That
want
don't
another quarter acre, dump some gravel. Things just change in the real world. And our process now is you turn in your as-bills and we'll verify them.
So then, is there anything for recertifications down the road that the county should keep up on just to make sure that they are still working like they're supposed to.
That would, then you're getting into more,
It'd be a maintenance
building
issue.
inspections and
It'd be a
land
maintenance
use
deal.
violations, so you're kind of switching over to, okay, they built it fine and we certified it, but then they filled the back acre. So now you're into a different area of the code.
Correct.
But you will have those as-built plans to show what was approved.
But who's actually gonna govern that to make sure that they stay the same
Well, I think
within the plan?
every county's got that going on all the time. Somebody's doing something different than it's approved. So that goes back into your county process of violations.
So that'd be back into a Toby deal. So virtually then we'd come back to talk to you and you would be the one that would have to send somebody out to make sure it was right.
So we're just starting the as-built process and the certification, and we're trying to have some teeth in it, so.
But I do agree 100% with the drain tile. It should be permitted because you need to know where it's at. 100%.
And an easy, not an easy way, but a way to get in the game is just mapping. Just show us where it's at and the size,
That's correct.
you know.
But you
Then-
need to know because everything changes.
Then an agricultural producer doesn't have to go hire an engineer to do calculations or something like that. A first step could be just mapping.
But I think it still should be a permit to actually get it on a map, if that makes sense.
After so many feet of drain tile, miles,
I just think it's, if you're gonna put any in, period.
You know,
piggyback on what he was saying, so
If, your as-built, when they get turned in, so it's just gonna be the engineer or whoever does the final as-built saying, yes, it's correct. Is anybody from the county gonna go out and verify it, or we just take this guy's word?
They are licensed and they are not allowed to falsify information, so
I'm not saying they'd falsify it intentionally, I'm saying they may,
miss some stuff.
yes. Cause as an inspector, I see that on a regular basis.
You know, so we're gonna rely a little bit on our group of verifying, are these as-built good enough?
Okay.
We may ask for some more information.
Okay. The other question I had is, and I don't know this, so I'm relying on your experience. Since where we're at now, in your experience, how long does it take before this process is up and running? And is this a 2 years from now, 5, 10,
Which
rough?
the whole plan's gonna go on decades, but are you talking about the permit plan? The permit?
Where we have this drain study in place, so like the Lincoln County Highway Superintendent, he knows that, okay, I've got X amount of water coming in, kind of like a hydraulic study. Okay, so I know I need to increase this culvert from an 18-inch to a 2-foot or a 3-foot, and then downstream I need to do this. Will that be part of this?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Now, I'm gonna soften that a little bit, you know, and I don't know if the county's gonna permit the county, but we'll be reviewing the plans. And if a 18-inch goes to a 48-inch, well, let's take a look at who's downstream. And that'll be the drainage portion of it.
That's
They're the road portion, and
Yep.
what's it take to get my road from stop overtopping? Well, then let's get together with drainage and say, what are the impacts of building a better road?
That's kind of what the timeline I'm looking to get that implemented. Is that a 3, 5 year down the road project, 10?
Probably 2.
Okay.
I mean, that the quickest,
Yeah.
get the plan adopted. Then, you know, we could look at Public Works CIP and talk to them about what projects they got going this year and just do a drainage review of them.
Okay. So when the CIP gets done for capital improvements, I'm guessing that budgeting for that whether it's grant or county funds or state funds, will play a part in that as well.
It will, and there's already been a project done that did this. You know, it got a little grant money, it got a little share from the local landowners and the benefiting properties. So you already have the financial mechanism in place to do a few projects.
Okay.
It's not part of day-to-day business, you know, so it's kind of moving a mountain to get one going. But it's there on how this could be started.
Okay.
But there's a lot in water, because it doesn't care, there's a lot of finger pointing. The top of the hill doesn't realize they probably should chip in a little bit for the lowland.
Yeah,
It's a hard
it's complicated.
education component there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And sometimes the lowland shouldn't even have built there. So you can't make it all up. You can't dream up every situation that happens. So you try to take each one and apply consistent principles to it. Policies, we call them.
So I wasn't gonna get up and talk, but I just feel I need to clear the air a little bit for my city friends here. You know, we don't just go plow tile in willy-nilly. We have to answer to NRCS, FSA, and if there's a farmable wetland, we can't touch it. So it's not like we're just going out there and going crazy, right? So I just wanna clear that up. And if anybody would like to learn more about tile, I'll gladly sit down with them and explain how that all works, cause you're right, in the spring, when the ground's froze still, there's a lot of runoff over the top. But we're trying to hold that water in the soil profile with tile to get it to wash through. We don't want runoff. We want it to go down. So I don't know your particular issue, but to me, it could be a multitude of things, but like I said, we're not out there just spending money just for the sake of spending money. So that's all I got to say.
Well, and that right there is a good example of drainage. You have different viewpoints, different economic interests. Thank you for speaking up. And this is exactly what the commission is stepping in. So it's great they're stepping in it. Good luck. And it would have been nice if we were 30 years into this. But here we are, so.
Well, it should have been done way before that. This should have been taken care of 80 years ago. Like this gentleman said about Minnesota. That's the way it should have been set up from the get-go. You guys are just too late. With all the economic growth and the urban sprawl, you're never gonna get a handle on it.
Well, if we don't try, it's just gonna get worse for sure. I think we can do things different moving forward. And maybe the answer is widening some conveyances. You know, as we talked about Southwest Minnesota,
Who pays for it?
right? And Minnesota has complicated ditch law where there are professionals that go out and assign benefit based on the project. And assigning benefit means you get to pay. But it's a very established ditch law too, so. This county has some of those tools available to spread the costs out, but not the established ditch law. And I think there was a question there.
95 is when the drainage was set.
here in 95, yeah.
That was actually 3 farmers. Yeah, 3 farmers. 3 farmers that set it up.
Yeah. All right, come on, we got more. I'd like to let you know, dealing with the cities, and they have their own evening meetings and stuff. It's been very positive. Their engineering is doing, what I'm used to seeing. Right now, that gray area outside the city limits where there's joint jurisdiction is tough. Because if you're a city staff member, that city line means something. I don't know about all cities, but you can't cross it to go permit something. So they have their own boxes that limit them, just like we have our own box that limits us from going across the county line. So there's all these sandboxes, but the engineering staff has been engaged in the TAC, and they come and we talk, and they're interested in what we're doing, and they'll take it back to their leadership. And I'm not saying it's all kumbaya, but it was great to get around the table and say, what are you seeing? What are you doing? I've got some studies. There's a study in the plan for Harrisburg. They just took their plan and put it in the plan. It's West Harrisburg, so they're doing planning. Now, there's the county residents that need a voice too. And the county residents are getting impacted, and that's what this is. So when the county residents get, I don't even know the word damaged, impacted, whatever word you want to do, that's where the county commission can get in the game, and that's what we're doing. What level we're in the game is, I wish you'd just tell me and save me a lot of trips out here. But that's important too. So in 20 years, they know how they got, they being the next crew knows how they got there.
One of the frustrations,
Should we switch seats?
no, sir. I'm comfortable where I am. One of the frustrations that has happened over time is that developers can mitigate wetlands. And we have plenty of examples. If you go down 57th Street, that whole area to the east has all been filled in, which was a natural holding pond. So now all the residents that live sound downstream are going to be impacted by them. And one of the frustrations is that developers can fill in wetlands, but help me if a farmer drives by, all hell breaks loose because you can't touch that. And there seems to be a disparity here when we're trying to balance a lot of that stuff. And especially around T, which has a lot of lowlands, we have all these creeks that are flowing downhill. And yet we see a steady encroachment from development from the north. And I'm wondering how you balance that, because you got joint jurisdiction, so you're negated if we object as a county and the city goes through. I mean, we're kind of overridden. In many of our joint jurisdiction, we handle the ag portion and the city handles the development portion. So when we're looking at this plan, it gets kind of complicated for a county to try to balance all of that. I mean, we sure as heck know about 9 Mile Creek. We can talk about retention ponds, and that's all well and good. I don't know who's all going to pay for that. But I'm just voicing kind of a frustration from my vantage point when I see people able to fill up a wetland, and I know that that wetland is designed for being a holding pond. So somebody's going to get more water as a result of that. So anyway, that's just a comment, sir.
Thank you.
Actually, Jim is right. The bad part is it comes down to actually going back to the state, getting a law enacted saying that, you know what, we already have a law that says you cannot harm your neighbor. So that means, how do we get something through the state to punish a town that doesn't care? Because they look at the economic growth over their neighbors, if that makes sense.
Mhm. The pressures on that town or any town's council for economic growth are big.
Well,
You can do drainage management without,
to give you a good example is when T brought into that, the county denied the Harlemi division out there by the interstate. T annexed it in. They didn't change anything. They filled in, go back to your note, they filled in a ton of wetland. And trust me, you watch some of those guys out there, and they're wading around in 4-foot deep water, 3-foot deep water. They filled it in. The only thing that engineer for that development said, we did not change any of the culvert sizes that lead out of there. We filled everything in. They dug a couple ditches. But if you actually drive by there now, you'll notice from the interstate, they actually dug a channel to the ditch, which shouldn't be there, by the way. That's not in their plan. So that should be reinforced and actually be filled back in, because that's not supposed to be in there. But anyway, that kind of stuff that happens doesn't help this plan, because now we lost a leg. So somehow the county has to stand up for themselves. And if it's to get the right lawyer, the county lawyer, that's what they're going to have to do. One that's going to fight for the residents, if that makes sense.
and I think your point is right on. There's different levels of this, you know, from state legislature to authority to how does this county go into a city limit, cross that line and approve or stop work? So does a permit work in a city? That's a tough place to be the county person, to walk across that line. Do you have the backing of commission, your attorney, residents, and you know what I mean?
Well, the residents should have plenty of back, because they don't want to get drowned out in the thing.
Well, yeah, some of your residents also work on that job too, so, you know, so anytime you permit something or more government regulation, you're gonna have both sides, I guess I should say.
It's no different than if you're going to big grade land, I mean, you've got to go through the process of getting that approved to get it certificated, and you're taking that wetland and you're moving it, you're up north. That ain't even close to that project that you just took the water, the wetland away from.
To that point, if we, or when we implement the standardized drainage practices, you know, where we're using the same way to calculate water, then we'll hopefully remove ourselves from this story of, well, I didn't change culverts, so nothing's changed.
But if you go
We'll
back-
have some analysis.
But if you go back to that engineer for that project, that's exactly what's on his record at that meeting. So you pull that back up, and they don't care. You can ask them, what kind of water's going out of this town? We know what's coming in. We don't care what's going on.
Yep. So you're not gonna change that unless you change something at the you're not gonna change that way of doing business unless you change something with drainage management on a countywide basis.
So that's what I'm saying, once you get this put in place, then it's actually up to the attorney to actually back the plan.
Then it's an ordinance, you know, if you're gonna do a permit. And then it's where does that ordinance cover? Just the county, the joint area, or in the city?
That's where you have to get them all signed.
So, on to his, when you guys were doing this study, did you guys do any work on a mutual aid type, for lack of the right word, where we agree to do this and we won't do this? Like, for instance, the development that went north of T High School, that used to be a slough, and that got filled in. Is there anything in this plan to, if I'm gonna fill this area in, somewhere in the same geographical area, I'm going to create a new retention area? So I'm not dumping all that extra water somewhere else?
So there are before, it's called existing conditions, calculations, and then there's after. They're called existing and proposed, but let's just call them before and after. And that drain in the bathtub needs to stay the same.
Okay.
And you can apply simple engineering models to come up with that answer. The issue going on right now is there's not that requirement, so any calculations can be used. And you end up with, you know,
His.
one engineer's opinion. And many times at a public meeting, technical issues can get lost. So you need to have both sides have technical review and technical capacity. And that's where you start to fix. That's where you start to move towards standardized drainage management. So this room knows that the next housing development in T is doing the same calculations as the next housing development out by Lake Alvin.
Okay.
Because you called Toby and he said, yeah, we used the same calculations, different engineers, didn't matter.
Okay.
And you standardize drainage management.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Question. How many years out are you looking on this project, in this study?
The plan should be updated in 10 years. That's the plan. But we talked about ordinance and projects, and we got plenty of stuff to do before we revise this. So again, hopefully 40 years from now, they'll say they started this in COVID 2020. And they're doing things differently. So the plan is a 10-year plan. Look at it, what should we do more of, what should we do less of, what did we step in, we shouldn't have stepped in. What projects did we get done? So it's ongoing. There's budget right now to do what we're doing. Plan reviews and finish the plan, and so there is budget in the county budget for this work ongoing. It wasn't, our goal was not a plan that you put on the shelf and then this room just says, well, nothing's gonna get done anyway. The plan then sets out what you're gonna do in the next, what'd I say, 2 years to get, you know, even that going.
Listening, when you were talking, you were saying, water has no boundaries. yep, we're trying to control water by permitting, you know, you can't do this, you gotta have a permit. But if you get the permit, you can dump the water. If you get a permit, you can dump the water. I live along 9 Mile Creek. Permits don't stop the water.
They want you to use the mic.
Or use the hand mic. Use the hand mic.
Is it on? On? Hold it.
Hold the button until the green light on.
Green?
Yep. Should be on.
Yeah, permits don't stop the water from coming. You know, these guys, Jim, God, I think he probably hates to see me come in that because I'm the type of guy that if there's a problem, let's get the damn thing fixed. You do the paperwork later. It took us how many years to figure out where the water's coming from? Rooftops and blacktop. Sioux Falls is coming our way. We know it's coming. We knew it was coming. Got a quarter section of ground. Ditch used to be 20 feet wide. It's 50 feet. I just gave up 3-4 acres for 9 Mile Creek, and it keeps rising. Retention ponds. Every road's a retention pond along 9 Mile Creek right now. The last 2-3 years, all you had to do was drive down there, and half the roads were closed because the water is running over them. So we've got retention ponds, and it doesn't work. If you're going to get rid of water, water runs downhill. You got to have a place for it to run into so it can get away. You can retain everything you want, but Mother Nature doesn't do the standard or the average. We maybe get 6 inches one night, but yeah, for the month, we only got 6 inches of rain. The average doesn't mean anything to Mother Nature. That water, when it comes, it comes. When it comes down, whether that's 1 inch, 2 inches, or one drop, water's going to move. And as for tile lines, I've got tile along 9 Mile Creek that runs into 9 Mile Creek. I can look back up in those fields when that 9 Mile Creek is running full. Those tile lines aren't dumping into 9 Mile Creek because they're backed up. That water's setting out in those fields. The water gets down low enough, the tile line will drain. So to say that tile is hurting us, no. Personally, I think it's the blacktop and rooftops that are doing more damage than anything. But yet we want to permit this, we want to permit that. Yeah, maybe that's good. Permit everything. But then let's make everybody adhere to those permits. I sat right here in this room, quarter section of ground. Guy wants to fill it. Dig a hole, raise along 9 Mile Creek 3 foot and put storage units in it. Well, just like you were saying, if the retention pond is below the bottom of the creek, it doesn't do you as much good. I agreed. But he got permission to do it. And you know what? He hasn't dug the hole, and he's filling in the dirt. And what do we do about it? Nothing. So unless you have some teeth into these ordinances and everything, we're wasting our time. Well, I'm old enough. If you're talking 5-10 years, it'll probably be 5-10 years before they even touch 9 Mile Creek with a digger. I'll be dead. And how many other people are going to die over this? Because we get a 3-4 inch rain, we're getting flooded. It used to be a 5-6 inch rain. You don't have to have that now. So let's study the physical things. You can always fill out papers as far as I'm concerned. You don't have time to ditch. You can only do that at a certain time. So, you know, like I said, this is about the third or fourth meeting I've come to, and we're still on the paperwork. We're still on the paperwork. I think the county, they just put in 3 culverts in a road by May that was shut down for 2 years because the water topped it and washed the thing out. If we get another 5-6 rain, I don't think the culverts that they put in are going to be big enough. We're going to lose the road again. But I guess that's the way we operate. So, thank you.
Yeah, you touched on a few things there, and I agree. Permits are moving forward. So the 3-legged stool, I gave the example one time, It's a leap forward when you treat drainage like roads. We gotta build some new roads moving forward. We gotta fix some old bridges, and they cost way too damn much, but we gotta fix them. And we gotta have staff and people working on this stuff. So drainage, if you view it like infrastructure, you're gonna do the permits moving forward. You're gonna standardize drainage, but you're gonna need to go back and fix the old stuff. And that's the project leg. So I agree with whatever you said, or everything you said, and yeah, we focused on permits, but you're hitting the other leg of the stool there to fix some of what's already been done.
Actually, I'll touch a little more on what Don was talking about, but in that area that they passed, that land was always underwater when 9 Mile went out. Problem is, it's real close to that Smith subdivision, which is a commercial division, that always gets water. About 3 years ago, they filled in a big section in the center that used to hold a ton of water. That was a storage unit for water, storage place for water. When that was filled in from the developer, that pushed the water within some of those businesses. I know that at that point, Toby had tried getting him to stop, no jurisdiction to do it. In instance, this last one was approved, did get pushed in. It's gonna put worse favors on that division again. So the worst part is now with that getting passed, them owners, the county has opened themselves up for a lawsuit, if that makes sense. Because of the fact that they've let somebody do something, and if they can figure that out engineering-wise, that it is pushed more onto that person's burden, then it's more liability on the county. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you're above my pay grade. It could be a civil matter. There's plenty of civil Hatfield and McCoy's going on.
But when does the county get held responsible for some of the decisions they make?
Correct. And you can sue over anything. So I don't know at what point the county becomes liable. It's liable about a bazillion things every day. But I did, listening to you, I thought my road example, you also need cops handing out tickets. So you need, build new roads, you need to fix the old bridges, and they cost too damn much. And you need staff to snowplow and grade, and now you need cops to hand out tickets. Cause I'm hearing all that from you, who makes sure it's done right, what are we gonna do when it's not? But yet at budget time, when the people sitting up here, they're under fire for not increasing the budget. So the cop part of drainage then requires money. The project part of drainage requires money. So you have all of these interests that are facing this group up here.
But you take care of the problems you have before you add new ones.
Well, you should, I'm getting back to my stool. You should work on the problems. When the new stuff comes in, you do it differently. And because it is gonna move forward, the economy's gonna move forward, people have a right to sell their land, people have, you know what I mean? So, there's gonna be more water.
You implement the plan. You smart about how you're implementing the plan.
Correct. And the plan that sits on the shelf then doesn't do anything, but as you get to implementation, do some projects, do some permitting, and have your staff work on it as a part of their job.
So part of this plan then, maybe I should go back up a little bit. So I remember back when we first met in Harrisburg, and I was kind of one of the sticklers that said, hey, you know, there should be something within there stating that if you're gonna develop this piece of land, you need to look at 10 miles out from this piece of land to see what it's affecting to actually engineer for this thing. Is that part of implementing into this plan situation? Is that in some ordinance in here now that's actually going to take effect?
So the practicality of an ordinance is you'd look at your neighbors. So it's not 10 miles. If you did let's call it a sub-watershed study, you know, let's take the upper reach of 9 Mile. You might have a little study that would look at beyond that property that's being developed. That is a county responsibility. That applicant needs to do calculations so they don't harm their neighbor. Practically, and again, I'm at,
Hopefully not just across the fence.
I was trying to think, I'm probably at 300 or 400 project reviews. And you might look at the neighbor, but you might go one culvert downstream, you might look at the farm crossing, or you might look at the public right-of-way. Sometimes you can't get on the farmer to go survey that field crossing. One neighbor doesn't want to let another neighbor on, so then you can go down to the next public right-of-way and get some information. So that's about as far as that applicant, and I don't know what applicant we're talking about here, really has to look at. Because again, if the bathtub drain doesn't change, it's not their responsibility to look 10 miles. It's their responsibility to build a big enough bathtub that that drain size doesn't change. We're gonna get more water. There's gonna be more blacktop, there's gonna be more tile. That's fact number one. If we're gonna get in the management game, how are we gonna do it? And what are we gonna look at? We should fix some old stuff and we should change the way we do new business. And it's not gonna stop development.
And I'm not trying to, but
No, but
I'm for development. I mean, that's been my life, to be honest with you. So I get that gig 100%. But where I get the problem with the gig is when you get engineers that don't have to look farther than the fence line, if that makes sense. That's where they stop. They need to look downstream to see, all right, how much more is it affecting down there? Are they at capacity down there? The instance that I gave earlier on the T development, the Harlemi especially, they didn't change culverts going out of there. But you know what that water does? It runs over the top of the roads. They don't have enough supply there. It just takes out the roads, and then you know where it's going? Right straight to Plass, down into the rest of, to the west, which is actually all those businesses down in there. Now they're starting to flood. T doesn't care. Because you know why? They're getting the tax base. They don't care. Let's drown their neighbors. Hate to say it, but that's the way they look at it.
well, and that's the county's role, is to look over a township
And
line or a city line.
that's why we
and
gotta get a
that's-
backbone.
That's our world, and that's why counties are good to do this.
That's why we gotta get a backbone. But until we get an attorney that's a backbone, county doesn't have anything.
about, this was ready to go up to the commission?
Yeah,
Did I hear you right?
it's ready to be adopted. So what that formal process is, I,
So is that something that's gonna happen in March or July, December? Do you know by chance?
Toby, what were our thoughts? A shot,
Yeah, it'll be in the next 2 months. We'll bring it forward.
which, might be 3 months or what, things happen, but let's say it's 2021, first half. More questions, come on. So based on what I've heard, so in Appendix G, if you really want to look, we listed out some projects that we could start looking at engineering and cost. One is increasing conveyances. So as you permit the next development, we'll pick on a gas station, you're doing that. Then, how many let's do a section of Kent's Creek. My name's Kent, so I'm not gonna pick on anybody's creek. So let's do a mile of Kent's Creek and say, if we're gonna widen this, then what do the culverts need to be at every road crossing? Then what's that cost? Then who pays? So those are called feasibility studies or a little project report. So it gets to the point of different projects. If it's conveyance and our goal is to get rid of the stuff, then you can do conveyance. Now, if you're gonna enlarge the ditch on somebody's land, then compensate them. If you're gonna increase upstream the culverts, well, then you have to look downstream, so you get this chain effect. But I just wanna let you know, we heard conveyance and roads overtopping, so let's write up a little project. If they wanted to do a study to pick a creek, we could look at a conveyance study, improving conveyance. If you wanna look at a low area, hey, if we turn that into flood detention, what would that benefit downstream? Maybe we don't have to upgrade 4 roads of culverts, maybe it's better to buy the lowland. We could look at a detention area. So all these are a part of balanced drainage. We're not just looking at permitting or just looking at projects. So I'm getting back to that balanced approach to move it forward to get in the game. And if you get in the game, your staff's lives are gonna change. There's gonna be a lot of time spent on drainage. Okay? And maybe now it's listening more, and maybe we're doing a little bit of reviews, but we're just starting to get into it.
I guess if no one else has anything tonight, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight on behalf of the County Board of Commissioners. As Kent mentioned, probably this spring, the County Board of Commissioners will be starting the adoption process. There'll be a formal public hearing for additional public comment, and then they'll consider adoption of the draft plan. The draft plan is available on the Planning and Zoning webpage under Plans. That'll be the final draft. Part of this meeting tonight is to encourage citizens to review the plan, provide some comments, submit them again to planning@lincolncountysd.org. We encourage that. This is a citizens plan of Lincoln County. So the more comments we get before adoption, as part of the adoption, it's a better part of the process. And I guess I'll end with is really The Board of Commissioners and staff is really committed that this is really the culmination of a process, but it's just the beginning of a real process. So with the adoption of the plan, it's really what I consider to be step one. And after that, then we really need engagement from the public, as was tonight, is what's the next steps? What's the permitting process look like? What does the implementation of capital projects look like? And more importantly, and I think that touch again a little bit on too, is that as staff, we participated in this process. And the one thing that I think that came out of it for us was the need for better communication coordination. That's step one, is to work with our municipalities, to work with our townships, to work with different people. And we've started doing that. And that's really been a result of this planning process. So planning isn't necessarily just here's a plan and adopt it. It's part of the overall process. But in order to have solutions, which is what we really all working towards in the county, we need a plan. And that's, again, is step one. So, again, I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. If you have any comments or questions, we'll hang around for a little bit. Otherwise, I encourage you to submit comments to our email account so we can address them. So, thank you.